Babysitting wasn't new to me. I'd done it plenty of times, and it was usually the same routine. Keep the kids entertained, feed them, make sure they didn't destroy anything, and get them to bed on time. That's what I thought when I took this job. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, seemed normal. Their house was nice, a little too quiet, but nothing weird. They had 2 kids, Liam, 6, Emma, 4. Mrs. Thompson grabbed her coat. "We'll be back around midnight. There are snacks in the kitchen. Bedtime's at 9. They've already eaten." I nodded. Easy enough. They left. Liam and Emma were polite, a little shy. We played a board game, watched some TV. At 8:30, I told them to start getting ready for bed. That's when Liam looked toward the hallway and asked, "Where did the other boy go?" I laughed. "What other boy?" "The one that was sitting next to Emma." Emma nodded. "He's hiding." A weird chill ran through me. "Are you messing with me?" Liam frowned. "No." I glanced at the couch. At the empty spot beside Emma. I'd been with them the whole time. There was no other boy. Maybe they had an imaginary friend. I brushed it off and ushered them upstairs. They hesitated at the bottom step. Emma whispered, "He doesn't like bedtime." I sighed. "Well, I do. Come on." They walked up, still glancing back at the dark hallway. After tucking them in, I settled on the couch, scrolling through my phone. The baby monitor on the coffee table showed their room, Liam in his bed, Emma in hers. Then, around 9:45, Emma sat up, her head turned toward the dark corner of the room. She was listening. I picked up the monitor. "What are you doing?" I whispered into the mic. Emma didn't react. She whispered something. Liam stirred. Half asleep, he mumbled, "Go back to bed." Then he turned over and pulled the blanket over his head. Emma lay back down. I watched for a while, my stomach tightening. There was nothing in the room. I put the monitor down. At 10:30, I heard soft footsteps upstairs, not running, not playing, slow, deliberate steps. The baby monitor was silent. I turned toward the staircase. "Liam?" No answer. I grabbed my phone flashlight and walked up. Their bedroom door was open. I peeked inside. Both kids were asleep. Then I noticed something. The guest room door was open. I was sure it had been closed earlier. I stepped closer and shining my light inside. Empty. Bed made. Nothing unusual. Then, the closet door creaked. I froze. The room smelled stale, like old dusty clothes. I backed away slowly, then shut the door. Fast. I hurried downstairs, locking the front door, just in case. Maybe the kids had opened the room earlier. Maybe it was just the house settling. I told myself I was overthinking. At 11:15, Liam came downstairs, rubbing his eyes. He won't stop knocking. My breath caught. "Who?" Liam pointed toward the staircase. A soft knock came from upstairs. A single, slow knock. My body went cold. "Go back to bed," I whispered. Liam hesitated. Then he turned and walked upstairs. He didn't seem scared. I checked the baby monitor. He climbed into bed. Another knock. I grabbed my phone and texted the parents. Me, "Hey, do you guys have a guest staying over?" Mrs. Thompson, "No, why?" Me, "The kids keep talking about another boy, and I swear someone's upstairs." Mrs. Thompson, "Don't go upstairs, we're on our way." My hands started shaking. Another knock. This time, it wasn't from the guest room. It came from inside the closet. I grabbed the nearest thing, a fireplace poker, holding it tight. Then, from the baby monitor, Emma whispered, "He's coming out now." I bolted for the door. The parents pulled in just as I stepped outside. Mr. Thompson barely put the car in park before he ran past me into the house. Mrs. Thompson grabbed my arm. "What happened?" I told her everything. The knocking, the guest room, the voice on the monitor. She didn't say a word. She just kept looking toward the house, like she already knew. A minute later, Mr. Thompson came back, pale, shaken. The guest room closet was open, he said. And he swallowed. The attic door was too. I stared at him. Did you find anyone? He shook his head, but something felt off. Mrs. Thompson finally spoke. Liam and Emma talk about him sometimes. I felt my chest tighten. Who? She hesitated. Then, the extra child. I waited for her to laugh, to tell me it was a joke. She didn't. Mr. Thompson locked the door. Come inside, there's something you should see. I didn't want to, but my legs moved on their own. We walked past the staircase. The guest room door and the closet door inside weren't just open. They were wide open, like something had thrown it open from the inside. Mr. Thompson pointed to the baby monitor. Check the playback. I picked it up, rewound the footage. At 11:15, the moment Liam came downstairs, the closet door moved, not fast, not all at once. It inched open, slowly, like something was creeping out. Then, the screen glitched, the image warped, and for a split second, there was a shape, a child, standing in the shadows of the open closet. It wasn't detailed, like the camera refused to focus on it, and then it was gone. I nearly dropped the monitor. What the hell is that? Mr. Thompson ran a hand over his face. We don't know. I turned to Mrs. Thompson. Why didn't you tell me? She finally met my eyes. Because we hoped it wouldn't happen tonight. Something about the way she said that made my skin crawl, like they knew, like it had happened before. I left, without another word, and I never babysat there again. It was a memory I never questioned until years later, when it became something else entirely. A mystery, a question, one I would never be able to answer. I was 8 years old the day my mother picked me up early from school. It wasn't unusual. Sometimes she had half days at work and would surprise me. She took my hand and walked me out of the building. My teacher waved at us. Everything seemed normal, but looking back, I realized something was very, very wrong, because my mother never came to get me that day. I didn't think about it again until I was 23. I was visiting home for the weekend, catching up with my parents over dinner. The conversation was casual until we started talking about childhood memories. My mom shook her head, talking about how strict her boss was, how she never got to pick me up from school except on scheduled days. That's not true, I said. Remember that time you picked me up early in 2nd grade? I had a stomach ache. My mom furrowed her brows. That wasn't me. I worked late shifts that year. No, I remember. You were wearing that dark green coat. You even held my hand and walked me to the car. Her face went still. My father set down his fork. Your mom was at work. I was out of town for a conference. No one picked you up early. Maybe you're misremembering, my mom finally said. Memory plays tricks on us. That night I couldn't sleep. The green coat, the grip on my hand, too firm, too cold. And the car, I couldn't remember what kind it was, just that it wasn't ours. I had always assumed I was driven home, but the memory ended after I got into the car. I couldn't recall getting out. I couldn't recall stepping inside my house. I had to know. The next morning, I called my elementary school. It took some convincing, but they eventually agreed to pull old attendance records. An hour later, I got a call back. We checked the logs, the administrator said. You weren't signed out early that day. According to our records, you left at the regular time. I swallowed. But I remember my teacher waving at us, at my mom and me. The woman hesitated. Your teacher didn't report seeing your mother that day. She never wrote anything unusual. As far as we can tell, you went home like normal. Two conflicting memories. One where I left early, one where I stayed until dismissal. Only one of them could be real. And worse, what if the real one wasn't the one I remembered? I spent the next few weeks digging. I checked old family photos, looking for the green coat. It didn't exist. My mom had never owned one. I reached out to old classmates. No one recalled me leaving early that day. Then, one night, while sifting through boxes in the attic, I found an old yearbook. I flipped through the pages, stopping when I reached my second grade class. There was a picture, an old faded snapshot of a group of kids standing in front of the school doors. And just beyond them, in the background, was a woman in a dark green coat. She was standing near the curb, slightly out of focus. Her face was turned away, but even blurred. Something was wrong about it. The angle of her head, the unnatural stiffness of her posture. I had to find out who she was. I took the picture to my mom. I pointed to the woman in the background. "Do you know her?" My mom took one look and immediately went rigid. Her knuckles whitened as she clutched the photo. "Where did you get this?" "The yearbook. Who is she?" My mom swallowed hard. "I don't know." "Mom, I don't know." Her voice was sharp, but there was something behind it. This was years ago. You probably just..." I grabbed the picture from her hands. "Why are you lying?" She didn't answer, just stared at me. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. "Don't look into this, please, just forget it." I didn't forget. I kept searching, and finally I found something. An old news article. The headline read, "Local woman dies in hit and run near elementary school. No suspects identified." The date was the same day I had been picked up early, and the grainy photo of the victim. She was wearing a dark green coat. I don't know who or what picked me up that day. I don't know if it was a mistake, a coincidence, or something worse. All I know is that I got into a car with something pretending to be my mother, and somehow I made it back home.